Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Hello, welcome to the John Loughlin Common Sense Podcast. Great to be with you. It's kind of like the John Loughlin Show, only not really. The John Loughlin Show, as you know, ran on WPRO for almost 13 years. We were on the air for quite a while, enjoyed immensely getting to know you, getting to know the Rhode Island community, and bringing you the news and information that I think you like. Now, I miss doing the radio, so I decided, you know what, let's go ahead and do a podcast for the campaign. And it's very important to point out that this podcast is paid for by the Friends of John Loughlin. And this is a podcast that we're doing to try and reach more folks and to get back into radio a bit. Our first show, this is our inaugural podcast. We'll be on once a week. Our first show, we've got Jessica Dela Cruz, who is a Senate Minority Leader over in the Rhode Island Senate. And Jessica's going to tell us about some legislation coming up. We also have John Ciani, who is John Ciani is very active with the Italian-American war veterans. And he's got an exciting new project going on in Burrillville. So we wanted to touch base with him as well. And one of the nice things about this, as opposed to radio, of course, radio, you have the immediacy, but with the podcast, you can actually see stuff, right? So we're actually going to try and get out of the studio a little bit, and we're going to try and show you more of what Rhode Island has to offer. Once again, my name is John Loughlin. This is the John Loughlin Common Sense Podcast, and our first guest is Jessica Dela Cruz. Welcome to the John Loughlin Common Sense Podcast. Now, you know, I've been on the radio for a while, and it's kind of, I miss it. I gotta admit, I miss it. So this is a way for us to kind of get back into the radio. It's not the same as the John Loughlin Show. For example, I don't have the 5-minute and 10-second intro. Everything is kind of compressed into one format. The thing I like about it, though, is it's not time driven, right? So we can go as long as the content takes us, or as short as the content takes us. So hopefully you'll find it interesting and memorable. I do need to disclaim that this podcast is paid for by the Friends of John Loughlin. Our first guest on our inaugural podcast is Senator Jessica Dela Cruz. Senator Dela Cruz, welcome.
Thanks for having me. I can't believe I'm the first. I get the
inaugural podcast. This is cool. So I wanted to ask you. You recently proposed legislation to adjust the rate of the income tax in the state of Rhode Island downward. And while it seems like a very modest reduction, I think rhetorically it points the conversation in the right direction. And if you could describe that legislation for us, that'd be great.
Yeah. So when it's 2% off the rate every year for 5 years. And so, some people would say, oh, well, how can you do 2% every year if we don't even have a 10% rate? I was like, well, it's not the actual, tax rate. It's off of the tax rate, right, which is different. So it will not be a huge tax cut. Like you said, it is a modest tax cut. But the importance of that is that it signals to the rest of the country, to businesses who are looking, for a stable place to, start up a business, that we are headed in a different trajectory. We're not headed in the direction of more taxes, more burden on the individuals in Rhode Island, but we are moving in the right direction. We're lifting that burden off of the taxpayer. And that's something that businesses look at. Where are you headed? What's your trajectory? And are you a safe place for us to start up a business so that our employees can build wealth? And that's what we want.
And I think like I said, more importantly, too, you've shifted the conversation. In the House, I understand the prime sponsor is Pat Serpa from West Warwick. You've got the conversation going now, not if we should reduce taxes or not, but how much, right? And so once you cross that rhetorical line, now you're starting to get the conversation moving in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. And so I wanted, I've put in a bunch of legislation in the past about cutting taxes, like the sales tax, which is probably my favorite. But it's always been poo-pooed, right? Oh, no, we can't do that. We can't do that. So this is a responsible way for us to start a tax cut because it's small. And also within the legislation is almost like an emergency valve of sorts, where if we find that it's actually detrimental to the state, that we can stop or we can pause it. So I tried to cover all my bases with this legislation.
Yeah, one of the things I find fascinating, too, is that the discussion in the General Assembly is how can we afford to cut taxes? Where will our money come? The discussion is never how can the taxpayers afford to pay the taxes, right? It's always what the state can afford and not the taxpayer. So I salute you for definitely changing the footing under this entire argument. And one of the things I'd love to see how it was that Florida was able to eliminate property taxes. Property taxes is perhaps one of the most burdensome taxes, and I understand the reason behind it. It's because it's predictable, right? It's not dependent upon the economy. You can budget to a property tax in a local municipality, but there's got to be a way to get rid of that, because it's really a vestigial system that's been around forever. I wonder if you could talk, though, about some of the other legislation, either concerning or positive, that's making its way through the General Assembly right now.
Well, there's the so-called millionaire's tax, which doesn't even start at $1 million. It starts at $675,000. So it's a bit misleading. And, you know, $1 million today is not a lot of money. You know, $1 million in 1950, sure, that was a ton of money. But today, I mean, that's a house, maybe some, you know, stocks or, you know, IRA money.
Or whatever, sure, yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not a ton of money. And we're always looking to, again, this state always looking to tax individuals when we should be looking at how can we fairly, how can we have a fair system? That having tax cuts so that it's fair across the board, that's a fair system, right? Picking and choosing winners and losers, I feel is unfair. And I feel, I'll say this. One of the nights that we were, actually it was the State of the State address, they all wore green, the progressives. And this was in support of their legislation. And I was like, you know, green is like green with envy. I mean, like it's not a good look. It's not a good color. And they didn't realize that, which I thought was kind of funny. But we have to start somewhere, and it's a death by 1,000 paper cuts in this state. And so when we look at Florida, and you mentioned Florida, how, you know, they're making tax cuts. They didn't make the tax cuts all at one time. They started with one initiative, then they went on to another, and then and guess what? Florida's doing just fine. They're booming. People are moving there in droves. Why? Because they're a friendly state for people to prosper. And that's the other issue. We don't want to just afford things in this state. I feel like
you stole my thunder. That's exactly what I was
you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, we were at a breakfast in Smithfield, and Senator Dela Cruz, who is my guest right now, did a rhetorical flourish that stuck with me. You hear a lot about Dan McKee's affordability agenda, and affordability is great, but why do we have to settle for affordability? Why can't we have a prosperity agenda? And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that. I thought that was a great turn of phrase. So good, in fact, I may steal it, with attribution, of course.
You should absolutely steal it. And that's what I said at that breakfast. I said every Republican should be talking about this, because when we're saying that we should be able to afford, it's almost like out of desperation, like, please, you know, to our rulers, please, if we could just afford a loaf of bread, if we could just afford our energy, if we could just afford a nice car for our family. No, we should not just want to afford. We should be able to flourish, to prosper, to leave generational wealth for our families, for our children. And right now, that is not the case. And I hear from a ton of Rhode Islanders who say, I'm moving down south, I'm moving to Florida, I'm moving to South Carolina. And they're serious about it. And we've seen the mass exodus in Massachusetts. And so we're not imagining it. And when we're told that we're imagining it, we know that we're not. We know that this is actually happening. It's been measured in other states. So what can we do? This is a start.
Quickly, as I wrap up, because I know you're busy, you're governing the state. So I just wanted to very quickly ask you about the 2A legislation that's coming through. Yeah. And one of the things that I find fascinating about this is that when I was a legislator, I always believed that you could compromise, right? You give somebody something that maybe is a little uncomfortable for you, they give something that's uncomfortable for them, and everybody moves on. And it seems like the 2A, the anti-2A people, it's all or nothing. And they literally want a complete end to private ownership of firearms in the state of Rhode Island. And it's like they won't stop. There is no compromising with these people. And I don't understand why in this day and age, they can't compromise. You got the magazine thing, leave everything else alone, and everybody be fine. But it's like every year they come back for more and more and more of our Second Amendment rights. And I wonder if you could kind of recap some of those bills that are out there.
Yeah, there are a ton of bad pieces of legislation when it comes to the Second Amendment. And I'm going to be honest here. I focus solely on the Senate. So because the House hearings are being, they're on Wednesday, I know of some of their bills, but not all of their bills, because again, I'm laser focused on the Senate, and that's already, a lot of legislation. So you're absolutely right. And I don't even call them the moms demand action in red. I call them the redcoats because they're traitors. And it's not enough for gun safety, because that's the guise under which they say we need legislation. It's never about that. Well, I shouldn't say it's never. Sure, they want gun safety. I'll give them that. But their ultimate goal is to abolish the Second Amendment in our state. And we see that with the legislation that is continually put in by legislators at the request of these advocacy groups. And I just don't believe anything that they say now when they say, well, we just want, sensible gun control. This is not sensible legislation in the least, not at all. So, my pitch at that breakfast, and to you and whoever's listening, is we need more Republicans in office. Honestly, that it's not, and I tell people this as well. If Republicans had 90 or 100 years of reign in this state like the Democrats have, would we live in a utopia? No, we would not. Do I think that the problem is that we don't have a balance in the legislature? Absolutely. That's 100% the problem. Not in the legislature and the general offices. There is no accountability. And when there is no accountability,
supermajority blob, basically, because that's kind of what they are. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. But can I give you a couple of pieces of legislation in the Senate running through that is really important? Also, tax cuts is Social Security, eliminating that tax. A lot of other states have. Senator Lane Morgan has been putting that in year after year after year, and it looks like it might actually have some traction this year. So that's going to be great. It'll be in the budget. She's still going to take a victory lap if that happens. The elimination of the wealth tax, but also really it's a death tax. Let's call it what it is. When you die, you also have to give over some of your wealth to the government. And I want everybody who's listening to be totally outraged when I tell them that there was a senator in committee who was so upset with this legislation. And he said, how dare Senator Palino put in this legislation? Because when you die, your wealth should go to the government so that they can give it to people in need, not to build generational wealth, not to give it to your family. So I'm going to work my whole life to give it over to the government so that they can send, not for my kids, all the hard work, I mean, what do you think, John?
No, I agree completely. Obviously you build generational wealth to kind of give a leg up to the people that you bring behind you and to ensure that they enjoy the same standard that you do. Before I let you go, I wanted to ask you social media. How do people follow you? How do people donate to your campaign? Where are you? And how do people keep up with Jessica Dela Cruz?
John, you're so kind. Thank you so much. They can follow me on my website, Jessica4RI. That's Jessica, FORRI.com. And they can sign up for legislative updates, which I do once a week. And if they want to donate, they can donate there too.
Jessica Dela Cruz, thank you for being a guest on our inaugural podcast. It was wonderful to have you.
Thank you so much.
So we're back. We're going to move on, I think, to our next guest. One of the things that's fascinating about this whole technology is our ability to kind of get in and out of guests rapidly and to be able to do this sort of thing. With me on the line right now, and I'm going to bring him up here shortly, is retired Master Sergeant John Ciani. Now, he's been incredibly active with the veterans and with the veteran community. And so I wanted to bring him onto the show to talk about something he's getting to go on right now, which I think you'll find very, very exciting. So let's bring John in. John Ciani, welcome to the podcast. Good to have you.
Yes, John, thank you very much for the kind introduction and having the opportunity to be on your inaugural podcast.
Thank you, John. So tell us, first of all, about your organization. I always get it wrong. And you and I have talked about this. I don't know. It's a mental block. It's the Italian American War Veterans
of the U.S.
So I was close.
Yep,
okay.
Yep. We are a congressionally chartered organization in existence since 1932. Signed into law by Ronald Reagan, signed our charter, congressional charter. And we are no different than the VFW, the American Legion, the AMVETS. We are a 501c19 veteran organization, and I'm proud to be the state commander. I think it's been the last 7 years, wow. But we've so many of our World War II veterans. And I can say I owe what I give to the veterans, my brothers and sisters. I owe my quality of life because of the Italian American War veterans reaching out to me and mentoring me and making sure that I was applying and taking advantage of the benefits that I earned in two combat tours.
Excellent. Excellent. So now you've got this thing going on up there in Burrillville, right? Now, I understand you've taken over the town of Burrillville pretty much. You kind of parachuted in and took over the whole town of Burrillville. Tell me what you got going on up there.
We're very fortunate. One of our sponsors left our organization as one of the organizations a building fund. He had identified what we were doing with veterans, reaching out to them in nursing homes, long-term care, and assisted living, and doing wellness checks, providing food for them and everything. So we bought a building. It's in Burrillville, this part of the town.
It's in Burrillville, apparently.
It's actually Harrisville, which is part of Burrillville.
Okay. All right, got it.
It is. Everyone knows it as Mr. Doughboy. It was known as Mr.
Doughboy, kind of a World War I reference there. I like that.
It was a destination for. I brought my son here many times. They had go-karts. They had miniature golf. They had a train. They had a batting cage. We were very fortunate to purchase the building.
Right.
It's on Bronco Highway. And, not to confuse, I go up north with Colonel Guarnieri and General D'Agostino and several other veterans. So I was mentioning, I said, when we're talking about the new place, let's call it Bronco Highway. So my wife doesn't get confused when I say pick me up at the club and her drive to New Hampshire for it.
Yes, that would be bad.
Let's looked at each other and said, remember LZ Bronco in Vietnam?
Right.
LZ Bronco was a base there. A lot of the Vietnam vets know it for many memories and a lot of bad memories also and everything. So they mentioned, why don't we call it LZ Bronco? And that's where we came up with the name. And it's a welcome, and especially for our Vietnam vets, we call it LZ Bronco. And it was a former restaurant, seating of 80. And we are hopefully about 2 weeks away from being open. It will be a private veteran and first respondent community club.
Right.
Very unique. We'll have our veteran resource center here, and veterans can come in. We can help them identify the benefits they're entitled to. We can help them file for those benefits from federal, state, and local. We're seeing an average of 5 to 10 veterans coming by a week just to check out the place. And about half of them, I end up sitting down with them from their benefit, the veteran cemetery, or many of them don't know about the veterans home, about that eligibility and all that and everything. So we're really looking forward to becoming a destination. What's going to be unique about our facility is we'll probably be only open 2 days a week. We won't be anchored by a bar, being the theme that's what we need to do to survive. It's going to be part of the community. We're going to be opening up the batting cage. We're going to be opening up the miniature golf. We're going to have a fishing shed for veterans to borrow canoes and go fishing. We're going to have an MWR shed for tools. Veterans that want to borrow tools, they can come in. They can sign out the tools. We're going to have a 25 by 25 building that we're getting installed. It's going to be a private for cigar smoking and that privacy, that the veterans enjoy and everything with the camaraderie, and they can go outside and do their own little thing. We're adjacent to a river. We're 5 minutes away from Wright's Farm, and I can tell you the outpour of volunteers from veterans to Burrillville High School. When I get into the Bronco is the logo for the town, for their teams.
I don't know if you can kind of move your computer a little bit and show us around what's going on over there.
Let me see how I can. I don't know if I can reverse. You'll see behind me.
Okay.
You'll see hanging
like one of the boots.
That is that's an army over the boot. So the theme is going to be army over that boot, and you come over here. You'll be able to see the Navy. Those are made by a disabled veteran. I can figure out how to do this the best way. And then you come over here. We've got the Air Force. You can see the Navy hanging over it.
Yep.
We're installing LED lights there.
Very nice.
And then you come over here. You've got the Marines. You've got the Coast Guard. We do have the Space Force that is being worked on right now, tailoring the LED lights that we have.
Right.
And each of those booths, behind those booths, will have a theme, marine theme. We have one that doesn't have a booth, and that's our Italian-American War Veteran booth. We just installed I don't know if you can see that, a shuffleboard, handmade, one of the Vietnam vets. And we have wheelchairs here that when veterans come out of their cars, we can use them, especially when they're coming from the nursing homes. We're going to have a shed for pinball. I'm trying to take a walk outside. We do have an ice cream set up also. So we're going to have ice cream from gelato events and everything. We have our little work, which is going to be our resource center. It's a progress in work, but we do have a computer. We do have the internet here. You can see some of the handouts that we do. We try not to overwhelm the veteran with all the VA information. We try to keep it simple for them. We're hoping in a couple weeks that to be open from 9 to 12, Monday through Friday, where veterans can come in on their own, have a coffee, hang out and everything. And if there's assistance that we can give, we've already got volunteers for those days and everything. I'll kind of walk.
How do people learn more about this? How do people follow you on social media, and where can they learn more about LZ Bronco?
Well, you can see on the wall too. We have all the wars hanging on the wall. It's LZ Bronco on Facebook. We just saw LZ Bronco on Facebook. Kind of very proud that our first posting when we established that Facebook page was a veteran, Vietnam veteran, that he made some nice, kind comments about his time at LZ Bronco in Vietnam and everything. So, and we've already made a difference in several lives here already with a young girl that pulled in with her grandmother. Her dad was died in 2019. He was in the Air Guard as a pilot, and we showed her the Veteran Legacy Memorial that her dad has a not a Facebook page, but a legacy page, and that she didn't even know her dad was in Afghanistan and everything. You might even know him. Tavares was his last name.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died in 2019 at the age of 40. Wow. So it was, kind of a little took us off guard when we're having conversation. I'm going to walk outside.
Okay.
And again, we sit on 3.5 acres here. Across the street, I'm sure you've been there, is Bella's Italian restaurant.
Yes.
Giuseppe, he used to own the Blue Grotto. He's been working with us and feeding our volunteers as needed. And we're hoping the next couple of weeks, I'll walk towards, you can see the building. It's, right now, we got seating for 60 in there. And outside, we've got a private road to come in. It is quite the piece of property. And what's unique about this property, too, is all the way down to the middle school, it's about a 3,000-foot path, like 12 feet, that belongs on our deed. And we're hoping to bring the children, middle school, here on key days, like Victory, not Victory Day, because they're not at school, but
thank you very much for joining us. And once again, how do people learn more about LZ Bronco? Facebook?
LZ Bronco is a Facebook page, or you can contact us at lzbronco@gmail.com.
LZ Bronco
Facebook page.
John Cianci, thank you for all you do. I appreciate it very much.
All right, John, you have a great day. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks. So that's going to do it pretty much for the first podcast. This is hopefully the first of many to come out. We're going to try and do these weekly. I do have if you want to comment on the podcast or suggest guests, it's actually very easy to do. I got to put my glasses on so you can actually see it. We have an email address that's dedicated to this, and it's John Loughlin CS Podcast, which stands for Common Sense Podcast, at gmail.com. And you can very easily connect with the show. You can suggest improvements. You can suggest guests or other ways we can make this more valuable for you as we go forward. And this is going to be, like I said, a weekly thing. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week.